After 25 years of Mockery, I revealed my hidden success as a CFO, an incredible, inspiring journey. Jake Johnson stood at the town hall podium, heart racing like a freight train, as murmurs filled the room behind him. His hometown of Maplewood, a place steeped in the warmth of small-town America, never imagined that he, the kid who cleaned garages and swept floors for a living, could ever rise to be a chief financial officer at a prestigious firm. Yet here he was, ready to shatter the narratives that framed him as just Jake. For over a decade, he had faced ridicule from friends who opted for stable jobs in manufacturing. Real jobs, they'd say. His father, a proud veteran, held a hard line on the importance of tangible work. A good job is where the heart beats. But Jake's heart beat differently, fueled by dreams and quiet rebellion. Every night, after putting his children to bed, Jake would slip into his makeshift office, an old desk tucked away in the attic. The flickering glow of his laptop screen illuminated hours spent studying finance, late into the night, fueled by coffee and a burning desire to uplift his family from the shadows cast by economic hardships. His mother's gentle whispers of encouragement kept him grounded. "You're meant for more, honey," she'd muse, gently placing her hand on his shoulder, her eyes brimming with pride. With each passing year, navigating the rocky waters of ridicule, financial strain, and the pressure of parental expectations, Jake felt more convinced of his path. "If just one person can believe in me, maybe I can show the world what I can do," he'd tell himself in the mirror. However, it was at the town meeting where everything changed. As resentment simmered in the room, fueled by the weight of old prejudices, Jake knew he needed to speak. Just as he gathered his thoughts, he was hit by a wave of vulnerability. Could he bridge the gap between his dazzling new life and the simplistic norms of Maplewood? Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let us continue. The room fell silent as he spoke, every word dripping with raw emotion. "You all know me as the kid who swept your floors and cleaned your cars," he began, his voice steadied by determination. "But I'm here to tell you that we can dream bigger than our circumstances." Every late night studying, every moment of doubt, I was driven by the desire to escape the shadows of financial struggles. As Jake's story poured out, his father shifted uncomfortably in his seat, hands buried deep in his pockets. A flicker of pain danced across his features, revealing a raw vulnerability at odds with his rigid beliefs. The tension surged, as townsfolk began whispering, questioning his worth. A familiar chorus of skepticism. Jake looked across the audience, searching for a connection in their eyes. "Success is more than a paycheck," he declared, the intensity of his passion igniting the room. "It's about the steps we take, the integrity we uphold. My journey is not just mine, it's ours as a community." Yet, as Jake searched for acceptance, he caught sight of his father moving towards the door, head low, a ghost of disappointment cloaked in silence. A lump formed in his throat. Would his family's values swallow his dreams? What awaited him when he stepped off this stage? The question hung heavy in the air, a poignant reminder of the journey still ahead. Jake stepped down from the podium, the weight of his own words still hanging in the air like a stubborn fog. He felt raw, vulnerable, exposed. The murmurs that had accompanied his speech were now interspersed with silence, as if the townsfolk were trying to digest the unfamiliar truth he had laid before them. Confidence mixed with dread twisted in his gut. As he walked through the crowded hall, his gaze swept over familiar faces, scarred and softened from years of small-town life. But they felt like strangers to him now. Some looked intrigued, others were still shaking their heads with disbelief, clinging to the just Jake narrative that had always defined him. And there, among them, was his father. Jake hesitated when he saw the disappointment etched deeply into his father's expressions. The strong, stoic man who had always been a pillar of his life now seemed like a shadow of that man, retreating further into himself with every glance. Making a direct approach felt impossible, though Jake desperately wanted to bridge the chasm between them. But would his father understand? Would he ever come to respect the path that Jake had chosen? Jake! A voice broke through his thoughts. It was Lucy, a childhood friend who had always stood by him, no matter how far he drifted from Maplewood. She approached him, eyes shimmering with admiration. I didn't know you could be so profound. You really opened my eyes. How long have you been hiding this side of yourself? He smiled gratefully, the warmth of her support wrapping around him like a comforting blanket. Thanks, Lucy. Just a lot of late nights, early mornings, and perseverance. You have to keep pushing this message. Maybe I can help, she said, her excitement palpable. We can arrange more community meetings, discussions. People here need to hear this stuff. For a moment, the thought of sharing his journey further filled Jake with hope. But the specter of his father's reaction loomed large. Would they embrace change? Or resist it? He nodded slowly. Yeah, I think maybe we can do something, but I also need to figure out some things at home first. With a heavy heart, Jake finally turned his attention to his dad, who had remained by the door, seemingly waiting for the right moment to slip outside. Jake squeezed through the crowd, each step heavy, reluctant. He caught his father's gaze, looking deeper than he had in years. Dad, can we talk? Jake's voice was soft, almost a whisper. His dad blinked, but there was no immediate response. The air caught in Jake's throat as frustration and sadness swirled within him. Those few words felt like a bridge being formed, but every second of hesitation threatened to crumble it. Now? His father asked finally. The tone wasn't open. It sounded like a challenge. Yes, please, Jake urged. It was time to confront the silence that had grown between them over the years. His father sighed, the weight of their unspoken animosity hanging thick. Fine. He turned back to the entrance, the sound of sliding doors echoing through the hall. They stepped outside, the cool night air hit Jake's face, mingling with the warmth of the dim lights from within. It felt like they were standing at the precipice of something monumental. Jake's heart raced with a mix of resolve and fear. He knew what he had to say wouldn't be easy to digest, but it was necessary. Dad, I just need you to understand. But before he could find the right words, a loud crash interrupted the moment. From the surrounding neighborhood, a commotion erupted. They turned to see headlights bouncing wildly down the street, a vehicle speeding straight toward them. Jake's heart sank. Was this a celebration or a catastrophe? In this small town where he had flown under the radar for so long, who knew what it could mean? As the vehicle screeched to a halt, he faced his father, his pulse racing. Do you think? But the question hung in the air, unanswered, because change was about to come crashing in. The vehicle's engine sputtered before it went silent, leaving an eerie hush in the night. The headlights cut through the dimness, silhouetting the figure of a man tumbling out. Jake squinted, trying to make sense of the chaos unfolding before him. The man looked disoriented, as though he had emerged from a fog. Is everyone okay? The voice was shaky but loud enough to draw attention. Jake's heart raced as a few townsfolk began to gather around, their faces painted with concern mixed with curiosity. Jake turned back to his father, who stood tense and guarded. What are you thinking? Jake's tone was urgent, almost pleading. His father's brow furrowed like he was navigating a storm without a compass. I don't know, Jake. It feels wrong, he replied, his voice tight. Jake could see it in his father's eyes, the struggle between old beliefs and the glimmer of something new. The man who had stumbled out of the vehicle was trying to catch his breath. I need your help. Please. He looked directly at Jake and then at the crowd nervously gathering around him. I was driving through and saw something bad happening at the old mill. You have to come. The mention of the old mill sent a wave of tension coursing through Jake's veins. Memories of campfire stories and warnings about the decrepit structure filtered through his mind. It was a place that had long been abandoned, rumored to be haunted or worse. What happened? Jake took a step forward, drawn in by the urgency of the situation. Gang activity. I think I didn't get too close. But I saw them moving things and I watched someone almost get pulled inside. You have to believe me. The stranger's voice cracked with desperation, the crowd murmured, expressions shifting from concern to fear. Jake felt a rush of adrenaline. Here was a chance to play a role bigger than himself, to show his father that he was no longer the boy who had to hide in the shadows. But as he glanced back at his dad, he saw the skepticism lingering in his eyes. I have to go, Jake said, turning back toward the figure. If there is something that needs to be stopped, we can't wait. His father stepped forward, a strong figure reluctantly rooted in old beliefs. Jake, wait. But Jake was already moving, his shoes crunching against the gravel as he breathed in the crisp air mixed with tension. This was his moment. Not just for himself but for the community that had long viewed him as just Jake. I'm coming with you, his father said, a reluctant admission. Jake turned to meet his dad's gaze, surprise blooming in his chest. Was this what it took to bridge the distance between them? The group started toward the old mill, their footsteps echoing in a rhythm of uncertainty and eager hope. The murmurs lessened, replaced by a palpable sense of purpose. Suddenly, he felt a hand on his shoulder. It was Lucy again. You're doing the right thing, Jake. Whatever happens, remember you're not alone. Thanks, Lucy, he replied, but he felt his heart racing, caught between hope and fear. As they rounded the corner toward the mill, the sight of the crumbling structure loomed ahead, ominous under the moonlight. But it ignited a fierce determination within him. What awaited them inside those haunted walls could change everything. What if going in meant confronting not just the danger but also the past he had tried to bury? Jake's breath caught. The thought spiraled with excitement and anxiety. What was waiting for them on the other side? As they approached the entrance, the door creaked, as if whispering secrets from the other side. He realized, in this moment, everything was about to change. But change came at a cost. Did they have what it takes to face it? The door creaked open, revealing the dark interior of the old mill. Dust motes danced in the beams of light cutting through the grimy windows. As the group stepped inside, their footsteps reverberated off the walls, amplifying the tension hanging in the air. Jake felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. Shadows flickered, and he instinctively glanced back at the exit, the world outside suddenly feeling much safer than the dim unknown before him. But Lucy's encouraging grip on his shoulder reminded him that he wasn't alone. Stay close, his father whispered, taking a step into the mill with a cautious resolve that both reassured and worried Jake. They moved deeper, the only sound was the crunch of broken wood beneath their feet and the whispers of their breaths. What do you think we'll find? Jake's voice was barely a murmur, but it broke through the silence like a thunderclap. Whatever it is, we're ready, his father replied firmly. The old man's tone was steadier than it had been earlier, a sign perhaps that he was starting to believe in their mission, in his son. Suddenly, a distant thud echoed from inside the mill, sending a jolt through Jake. He exchanged glances with Lucy, whose eyes widened in alarm. What was that? Just keep moving, Jake urged, forcing himself to sound braver than he felt. They pressed on, each step propelling them further into the heart of the mill. As they turned a corner, a flickering light caught Jake's eye. He approached cautiously, heart pounding, and peered into a small alcove. There, a group of shadowy figures was gathered, busy with crates and packages, whispering urgently. It looked like something out of one of those campfire tales, an eerie tableau of secrets hidden in plain sight. Is that them? Jake whispered, hardly able to keep his eyes from widening. Looks like it, his father replied grimly, scanning the scene. We should maybe call for help. No. Jake shook his head violently. We can't just wait around. We have to see what they're doing. Before his father could protest, Jake stepped into the open, moving quietly as the others began to notice the unsettling intrusion of light and sound. He had to know, had to prove to himself and everyone else that he could take a stand. Hey! Jake's voice broke through the noise, echoing in the silence that followed. The group turned, expressions shifting from surprise to hostility. What are you doing here? One of the men barked, stepping forward, his tough exterior overshadowed only by the glint of something dangerous in his hand. Jake's breath caught in his throat. He felt a rush of terror wash over him, but something deeper burst forth a resolve. He wasn't that scared boy anymore. I know what you're up to, and it ends now. His heart raced as tension crackled in the air. Behind him, he felt Lucy and his father inch closer, preparing to back him up. Get back, Jake, his father warned, but Jake stood defiantly, feeling the weight of the moment. The air between them thickened, unsaid weight hanging in the balance. Just then, another sound broke through the thick atmosphere, a crash, loud and unexpected. Something reacted inside the mill, vibrating with energy. Look out! Lucy screamed, instinctively pulling Jake aside as a beam of wood splintered from above, showering the ground where they had stood moments before. Jake stumbled, catching himself against his father, who held firm, determination pooling in their combined strength. They had come to be heroes, but now they were merely trying to survive as chaos erupted around them. As the dust settled, Jake looked up, not daring to let go of the fear gripping his heart. What had he unleashed? In that moment of danger, every voice in his head screamed at him to turn back. But when he looked at his father, he saw a flicker of pride mixed with worry. Together, they could face this. The strangers began to regroup, their eyes fiery with danger. Jake took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. They had stumbled into something far larger, and the cost of their courage might be more than any of them had anticipated. What would happen next? It was a question that hung like smoke in the air, both a challenge and a promise. The tension snapped like the strings of a bow drawn too taut. As the dust settled, Jake felt his heart throbbing in his chest. The men surrounding the alcove were all turning their attention toward him now, their surprise giving way to anger. What did you say? The man with the dangerous glint in his hand growled, stepping closer, shadow swallowing him as he loomed over Jake. Jake stammered, the words getting stuck in his throat. Lucy's grip tightened on his arm, a protective anchor. Everything felt surreal, like he was watching from the outside, yet he couldn't look away. The atmosphere was thick with uncertainty. Suddenly, the thought that he should listen to his father crept into his mind. The stories about his heroism at school, about standing up against bullies, felt hollow now. Here, in this dark mill, facing real threats, all that resolve seemed small and useless. What do you think you're doing charging in here? Another man barked, advancing with a swagger that oozed suspicion. They looked like they belonged to a different world, one where shadows lived and danger was as ordinary as breakfast. I am not afraid of you, Jake shouted, surprised at the strength in his own voice. The words hung in the air, trembling with uncertainty but also resonating with conviction. Fear? That's all you need to get by in life, kid, the tough one chuckled darkly. His grip on whatever he was holding tightened, his knuckles turning white. And what are you going to do about it? Then, as if the universe aligned with Jake's rising courage, Lucy stepped up beside him, her expression fierce. We're not leaving until we understand what you're hiding. The men exchanged glances, confusion flickering across their faces. Hiding? The first man spat back, caught off guard. This place is a secret, Jake added, his voice slightly steadier now. You think you can just operate here without consequences? We know something is wrong, and we want to just back off. The group began to shuffle uneasily. Their once unified front began to fracture as the loud crash echoed in the background, serving as a grim reminder of the precarious situation they were in. Disapproval mixed with fear swept through the group, clearer than the dust swirling around them. Let us back off, yeah? One man muttered, his bravado fading. This ain't just kids with flashlights. We should take a step back. But the tall figure, his expression twisted by something darker, remained unmoved. You're not going anywhere. You think you're heroes? You're just trespassers. In an instant, the atmosphere crackled once more, tension soaring as they all braced for what might come next. Lucy pressed closer to Jake, and his father shifted, ready to defend them. Jake's heart thundered in his ears. They had crossed a line, and in that moment, he realized the stakes were higher than he'd ever imagined. Maybe you're right. Jake took a shaky breath, sensing a shift in the air. But understand this, we will expose what you're doing here, whatever it takes. The menace in the room thickened, and Jake felt the weight of their anger bearing down on him. But even more potent was an impulse rising within him, a surge of determination pushing aside fear. What if they could stand together against this darkness? Then he noticed something glinting in the back of the alcove, half hidden in the shadows. His breath caught. Wait, what's that? The men followed his gaze, their eyes narrowing with suspicion. At that moment of distraction, Jake felt hope flicker within him. Perhaps they could unearth the truth after all. As the danger loomed stronger, he wondered if they could fight against the storm coming their way. What lay in the shadows waiting to be discovered? And what challenges awaited them in the depths of the mill? The glint from the shadows beckoned to Jake like a siren's call. His heart raced as he focused on the object hidden away, struggling against the growing tension in the room. The men hesitated, shifting their weight as they glanced between the revealing shimmer and Jake's determined face. What is it? Lucy whispered, her voice barely audible through the thick air. She leaned closer, her courage pulsating through the grip on Jake's arm. I don't know yet, Jake replied, his own breath a mixture of fear and fascination. He edged forward, wanting to look closer. The others were distracted, their hostility momentarily replaced by curiosity. The object sparkled again. It seemed to pulse with an energy that was almost magnetic, and Jake took another step, ignoring the way the men were tightening their postures. We can't leave without knowing, he murmured. Stay back, kid, the tough one warned, but Jake was already moving, compelled by something deeper than fear. He leaned closer to the alcove, forcing his eyes to adjust to the dim light. What he saw took his breath away. It was a small safe, old and rusty but undeniably significant. Jake felt an electric thrill pass through him. This was no mere coincidence. Whatever was inside might hold the key to uncovering the truth hidden in this place. Do you see it? He asked Lucy, excitement and apprehension mingling in his voice. She nodded, her expression shifting from fear to determination. Let us get it open, she urged, shifting her stance as if ready for anything the men might throw at them. Open? You think that's a good idea? One of the men sneered. But there was a tremor in his voice now. Jake glanced back, sensing their fear taking root. Why do you care? Jake challenged, the words flowing from a newfound confidence. Are you afraid of what's in there? The leader's eyes flashed with rage, but Jake noticed uncertainty flickering beneath the surface. He pressed on. It's clear you're hiding something. What if it changes everything? The group exchanged uneasy looks. It was as if a chink had formed in their armor. But still, they stood their ground, unwilling to budge just yet. Enough of this, the tough one said firmly, stepping forward, his eyes burning. You'll regret this. Before Jake could respond, he lunged. Instinct kicked in, Jake grabbed Lucy's arm and pulled her back. They stumbled, barely avoiding him. In that brief moment, a fire ignited inside Jake. I want to know what you're afraid of. Jake shouted, desperation sharpening his voice. The tall man hesitated. You think you have a right to know? He retorted, anger etched on his features. No, but we have the guts to find out. Jake replied, his heart hammering in his chest as adrenaline surged. Then, without warning, the strong sense of rust and dampness washed over Jake as he turned his focus back to the safe. The dust particles danced in the sparse beams of light, framing the object of mystery. Whatever hesitance the men had was visibly shaking, their unity fracturing under pressure. What do you think is inside? Lucy asked, her voice a tremor of excitement and caution, pulling him back from the edge of recklessness. I don't know, but it could change everything, Jake said with a fire in his heart, but that hope was tinged with uncertainty as the atmosphere thickened once more. Just then, a soft but unmistakable click echoed through the mill. Jake's heart sank. What if they had pushed too far? The men were closing in again, their facade of bravado cracking. It's now or never, Jake whispered to Lucy, determination igniting. As they inched closer to the mysterious safe, a question lingered in the air. Would they unravel the darkness that awaited them, or would it consume them whole? Jake's pulse raced louder than the clamoring voices around him. The men were closing in, and the tension hung thick, like a weight pressing on his chest. He shot a glance at Lucy, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and exhilaration. This was it. There was no turning back now. "Do it," she whispered, a strange strength radiating from her. Her grip tightened around his arm, anchoring him to the moment. Jake nodded. As he turned back toward the safe, he felt a surge of bravery wash over him. He reached for the rusted handle, his fingers trembling. The air crackled with electricity from the safe, from the stillness that had suddenly enveloped the room. "Do you really want to risk this?" The tough one spat, his voice dripping with venom. "You have no idea what you're messing with." Jake's resolve only strengthened. "Maybe you should worry about what's inside it," he shot back. "What are you hiding?" The tall man's jaw clenched, anger and fear mingling in his expression. The other men shifted uneasily, glancing at one another, as if weighing their options. It was a flicker of doubt, a momentary crack in their tough exterior. He took a breath and tugged on the handle, expecting resistance. To his surprise, it moved smoothly. The door creaked open, and a cloud of dust erupted from within. Jake peered inside, his heart hammering in his chest. At first, all he saw was darkness. But slowly, as the dust settled, shapes began to form. He squinted, trying to make sense of the silhouettes. "Jake!" Lucy urged, pulling him back slightly, her voice a hiss. "What if it's dangerous?" He glanced at her, but the mystery was too alluring. "But what if it's everything we've been looking for?" Inside, a glimmer caught his eye, shiny objects peeking out from beneath faded papers. He reached in, feeling the cold metal against his fingers. One by one, he pulled out items: a watch, some photographs, and a small, worn book. Jake froze. The book seemed familiar somehow, almost nostalgic. As he opened it, his heart sank at what he found inside. Scribbled notes, names, dates, secrets. His breath quickened. They weren't just any secrets, they were tied to the past, his past, and that of the men around him. "Jake, we should." Lucy's voice faded as the leader stepped closer, anger lining his features. "Put that down. You don't know what you're dealing with." But Jake couldn't look away. The pages held stories, lives intertwined with pain and hope. He glanced at the first photo. A young woman with a bright smile and familiar eyes. It was his mother. His heart clenched. "You!" The tall man shouted, staring at Jake as if recognizing him for the first time. Fear washed over his face, mingling with rage. "What is this?" Jake demanded, looking up. "What did you do?" The atmosphere thickened, palpable with unanswered questions. The men exchanged guilty glances, the confidence they had moments ago now dissolved like mist. "It's not what you think." The leader barked, anger dissipating to panic. "You shouldn't have to know." But it was too late. Jake felt the weight of truth settle on his shoulders. Every word in that book was leading him closer to something monumental, a revelation lurking just beyond reach. "Let's just get out of here," Lucy urged, her voice trembling. But the fire inside Jake blazed stronger. "No. I need to know," he declared, standing tall. The tension heightened as the men stepped back, the fight leaving them, hostility replaced by fear. Jake clenched the book tighter, the answers he craved swirling in his mind. This was just the beginning of something they couldn't foresee. "What are you willing to sacrifice for the truth?" Jake asked, the question hanging in the damp air like the dust motes that a loud crash echoed outside, shaking the old mill's bones. The moment of truth felt closer than ever. Jake felt every heartbeat echo in his veins. "What now?" Lucy whispered, glancing nervously over her shoulder. The door burst open, the shadows of the past rushing in. The real confrontation was about to begin. What had they awakened? The door splintered as it swung wide, revealing a group of uniformed men, flashlights cutting through the dust-laden air like beams of sunlight. Jake's heart raced. Were they allies or enemies? Lucy instinctively took a step back, and Jake could almost feel her trepidation merging with his own. "Who are you?" one of the officers barked, his voice steely and commanding. "Put your hands where we can see them." Before Jake could respond, the leaders grabbed his arms, the tough man's grip tightening painfully as if to hold him back. Lucy's eyes darted between the officers and Jake, a vivid mix of uncertainty and resolve flashing across her face. "Wait, listen. It's not what you think," Jake pleaded, desperation creeping into his voice. "We're just trying to understand enough." The officer cut him off, stepping into the room, his eyes immediately landing on the safe. "What is going on here?" The tension ratcheted up another level. Jake glanced nervously at Lucy, who stood beside him, her expression an amalgamation of fear and determination. The book in his hands felt heavier, almost a burden now, filled with lives and secrets that couldn't just be brushed aside. "We need to move," the tough one snarled, panic creeping into his voice as the reality of the situation descended. "Why?" Jake challenged, the fire within him igniting further. "What are you hiding?" "This book, it's connected to my mother, to everything. I deserve to know." The officer's eyes flickered with suspicion as he took a cautious step forward. "Your mother?" he asked, his tone shifting slightly. "What do you mean?" Jake hesitated, the raw emotion threatening to spill over. He had spent years chasing shadows, always hoping for a shred of truth about the family his mother had tried to protect him from. "I found this book, her picture is here. You know something about this, don't you?" Suddenly, the tall man behind Jake moved, trying to make a break for the exit. The officers reacted immediately, shouting orders as they lunged toward the escaping men. Chaos erupted, bodies colliding, and voices shouting. "Drop it! Get on the ground!" In the flurry, Jake could only grasp his mother's picture tightly, the pounding of his heart mirroring the chaos around him. He caught sight of Lucy, who had moved closer, her mouth moving but no sound reaching him through the chaos. Then, there was a moment of calm amid the clamor. Jake's eyes locked with the officer's, the weight of recognition settling between them. "We need to talk," the officer finally said, his tone now softer, as if he understood the significance of what lay in Jake's hands. Before Jake could respond, he felt a grip on his shoulder, pulling him back as the tough man's voice rose above the others. "You don't know what you're getting into." But Jake was resolved. The truth was within reach, and he wouldn't back down now. "I'm not afraid," he declared, standing his ground. "Maybe you should be," the officer warned, urgency creeping back into his voice. "There are forces at play here far bigger than you know." With the men now subdued and the officers regrouping, Jake turned to Lucy, his breath hitching with anticipation and fear. "What if this is everything we've been searching for?" he whispered, hope mingling with dread, but before Lucy could respond, a commotion broke out again, louder this time, echoing through the mill like a thunderclap. Jake's heart plummeted as he realized they were not alone. "What's happening?" Lucy asked, her voice trembling. Outside, the sound of approaching sirens wailed in the distance, urgency creeping ever closer, threatening to upend everything. Jake's mind raced as he took in the swirling chaos. Would the truth finally unfurl before them, or would shadows of the past swallow them whole? "Can we trust them?" Lucy asked, her eyes wide with fear and uncertainty. "Trust is the least of our worries," he replied, his voice laced with determination. "We have to find out what's next before it's too late." As the sirens closed in, anticipation gripped him. The moment of revelation was drawing nearer. What new truths lay in wait? The piercing wail of sirens intensified, cutting through the air like a knife. Jake could feel Lucy's hand clench onto his arm, her grip firm yet trembling. The room felt smaller, the shadows seemed to twist and close in on them as if the very walls were listening. The officer's eyes darted toward the door, the first hints of panic flashing across his stern face. "We need to get out of here," he growled, his voice no longer commanding but tinged with urgency. Jake tightened his hold on the book, the weight of his mother's legacy pressing down on him. "Not without answers," he insisted, stealing a glance at Lucy, whose face was a canvas of fear and determination. "They might know something about her." I need to know what this is all about. Time's up. The tough man barked from behind him, clearly infuriated at the unfolding developments. You want to dig deeper? You have no idea what you're up against. It's my life. Jake shouted back, breathing heavily, as adrenaline coursed through him. You're not just going to walk away without telling me what's really happening. A sudden crash echoed from somewhere outside the mill, drawing all their attention. The sound of footsteps pounded toward them. Menacing shadows flickered at the doorway as more figures emerged, their intentions unclear in the dim light. Get down! One of the officers yelled, as the jostle of bodies churned the air thick with fear. Jake instinctively pulled Lucy down with him behind the crumbling remnants of an old crate. As they crouched, the world outside erupted, yelling, chaos, and the shrill cries of sirens morphing into something sinister. Who are they? Jake whispered, his heart racing as he peered over the crate. The figures were dressed in dark clothing, their faces obscured, moving with determined precision. I don't know, but they don't seem friendly, Lucy replied, her voice shaky. Jake's insides twisted. Was this a mere coincidence, or was he digging into something that should remain buried? Whatever's going on, it's bigger than us, the officer said, his expression taut as he surveyed the area. Stay down and let me handle this. Fear coursed through Jake, but so did a fierce determination. He couldn't hide any longer. Not when he was so close to his mother's truth. We can't wait for them to handle this, he muttered, adrenaline pushing him to act. We have to fight for answers. For my mother. As if in response, one of the dark figures turned, locking eyes with Jake. The hairs on the back of his neck prickled. There was something familiar about that haunting gaze. Was it a trick of the light, or had he seen this person before? Jake, what are you doing? Lucy whispered urgently, sensing his intent. We have to get out. He hesitated only for a heartbeat. Maybe it was fate. Maybe it was intuition. Whatever it was, it told him this was his chance to confront the pieces of his past. I'm not running anymore, he said, his resolve hardening like steel. I need to find the truth no matter the cost. He rose from his crouch, heart pounding like thunder in his chest, as the officer grabbed his arm, yanking him back down. Are you out of your mind? You don't know what's at stake. I can't back down. Not now, Jake replied, narrowing his eyes as he resumed his gaze toward that shadowy figure, who seemed to close the distance, an intense energy crackling in the air. Lights from outside flashed brightly as the sirens crescendoed. In that instant, Jake knew they were on the brink of something monumental. The secrets of his mother's past could collide with the present in a way he never anticipated. Whatever happens next, he murmured, heart racing, it'll change everything. As he prepared to step into the chaos, the world before him blurred, but one thought burned clear: he was ready to battle for the truth. Then, the air shifted, a voice rang out amidst the tumult, and the next moment spun Jake into a revelation he had never expected. Who was this figure, and how were they connected to everything he was trying to uncover? Was this the moment of truth he both feared and craved? As Jake stood at the precipice of revelation, the scene unfolded like a movie reel in his mind. The world around him seemed to dim, the chaos surging forward, but his heart ignited with purpose and a feverish need for confrontation. Jake, stop. Lucy's voice pierced through his thoughts as she struggled to hold him back. You don't know what you're getting into. I have to know. He shouted back, feeling the weight of the book clutched tightly in his grip, each page filled with echoes of his mother's past, echoes that had haunted him his whole life. This was not just about him anymore, it was about unveiling the truth. He stepped toward the dark figure, heart pounding. The shadows danced in the flickering light, framing a face that sent chills racing down his spine, a mix of recognition and dread settling in his gut. Who are you? Jake demanded, the strength of his voice igniting the room. Fueled by desperation and courage, the figure moved closer, revealing a woman with eyes that shimmered with secrets. You're not supposed to be here, she said, her voice barely rising above the tumult. There was a tremor of fear in it. Was it fear of him, or of what lay ahead? Jake pushed forward, urgency driving his every word. I found this book. It's about my mother. What did you do to her? Emotion welled up in his throat, rage and anxiety battling for dominance. She hesitated, and in that fragmented moment, Jake saw not just a shadowy adversary, but someone conflicted, tangled in a web of their own making. Your mother was trying to protect you from things you couldn't understand, she warned, her gaze flickering to the chaos outside. I need to understand. Jake pressed, steeling himself against the looming figures around them. What danger did she shield me from? The urgency of his search for the truth pressed against his chest like a heavy weight, balancing between hope and fear. Before she could answer, the officer surged forward, breaking the tension. Get back. We need to secure this area. His voice cut through the emotional storm, but the figure didn't flinch. Knowing he had to act, Jake raised the book higher. Wait. This holds the key to everything. The woman's eyes widened, sparks of recognition igniting a flicker of connection between them. You don't understand the ramifications, Jake. It's more than just a book, it's a ledger of lives forever changed. Just then, the door rattled violently, and the renewed sound of footsteps thundered in from outside. The officers shouted orders while shadows swirled menacingly under the door. Tension surged like static in the air. Now, Lucy urged, pulling Jake back slightly. We can't stay here. No. Jake protested, rooted in place. This is my chance. In that moment, the tough man made a desperate move for the door, seeming as if he might break free from the chaos. But it was too late. The officers surged in, lights flashing, the scene quickly spiraling into chaos. Don't let them escape. A voice commanded, and suddenly hands were everywhere. Seizing control of the situation, Jake turned back to the woman. I can't leave without knowing the truth. Please, help me. The tumult horned in as officers restrained the men, voices rose, and Lucy remained beside Jake, her expression unwavering despite the chaos. Whatever happens next, we're together in this, she reminded him, squeezing his hand. The woman stepped closer, a soft determination flowering in her expression. Fine. If you truly wish to uncover the truth, then you must be prepared for the weight it bears. Just then, the room filled with a booming sound, a call to action, and for Jake, a resolute feeling of belonging surged through him. The time had come. They were not just fleeing from shadows, they were confronting them. The figures outside scattered as the officers took control, but Jake stood firm, a symbol of hope. I will find the answers, no matter the cost. He declared, and the entire mill seemed to vibrate with the intensity of his resolve. Jake turned back to the woman, the weight of the book symbolizing his resolve to unveil the truth. What do I need to do? Her eyes softened, glinting with respect and a hint of regret. Follow me. There's a legacy you need to understand, one that could shatter the very fabric of what you thought you knew. And just like that, everything he had ever wanted became clearer. The man he had become wasn't just for him, it was for his past, his family, and the bonds he had forged in pursuit of truth. As they pushed through the remnants of secrecy and silence, a glaring truth pulsed beneath the very surface, a truth that would finally bring Jake the peace he sought. Behind the layers of shadows, a journey awaited him, one powered by unconditional love, hope, and the unending bonds of family. The sirens faded into the background, a memorial hymn to what had been, while Jake stepped confidently into the unknown. Change was no longer about escaping the shadows, it was about embracing the light. That realization forged through him. He felt more than ready, he felt triumphant, and here was the moment, the call to action. A chance not just for Jake, but for all of them to shape what was to come. If you resonated with this journey and felt the inspiration pour out from Jake's transformation, this is the moment to show your support. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. You need to show it to others who need this message of hope. Comment your reactions and feelings about the ending. What did this journey mean to you? And don't wait not even one more second to share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.